Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I recently heard a phrase that totally inspired me. There's no other way to put it. And if you listened to last week's episode, it was around the importance of mentorship. And I mentioned that I have a new mentor. And she said this phrase recently in one of her teachings, and I was like, it just landed. And I wanted to share it with you today and share my experience around it, because maybe it will land for you too. And maybe you will also have this experience, or it'll help you think about something in your life. So we can be 100% grateful for something that we have in life and still be dissatisfied. And I think that for a lot of people, practicing gratitude now has become quite mainstream. I think it's important. At the same time, we have gotten to a point, I think, where if we're practicing gratitude, it's almost like accepted that that should be enough. And so that's why this concept of being grateful and dissatisfied resonated with me, because it put words on something that I had at work. And so I wanted to talk to you about that today. So when I was working back in, so I worked in market research. I was working for one of the big global market research firms, and I had an amazing job. And I was traveling the world. I was meeting really interesting clients. I was part of an amazing team. My boss was fantastic. So it seemed like I had just had so much to be grateful for. Also in my personal life, I had so much to be grateful for. My kids were doing well. My husband loved his job. We were traveling. We were doing things with our spare time that we enjoyed. Our health was amazing. So I was also very, very grateful for everything in my personal life. But I was still dissatisfied. I was dissatisfied, and because I felt that I had reached a limit. I had reached a certain ceiling, and I felt that I was almost like a hamster on a wheel underneath this ceiling. And what's really funny is if you look back at my resume, this happens to me every 4 years. So when I was in the professional environment, I changed jobs literally every 4 to 4.5 years, because everything on paper was great, but I was still dissatisfied. I just had a calling and a feeling that there was more, that I could be doing more, learning more, contributing more, having a bigger impact on the world. Yes, I was ambitious. I wanted more responsibility. Yes, I wanted more money. But those weren't the underlying, like, driving motivational forces. The learning was challenging myself to do harder things. And what's funny is every single time I left a position and joined either a new company or a new job, I always would take on like the most difficult situations ever and turn them around. That is what excited me, was taking on a business unit that was losing money. coming into a company that was going through major transformation, and I had to drive that transformation in Europe. And then also recently, when everything seemed to be fantastic, I was the CEO. I mean, I had arrived and I still left that job because I was becoming dissatisfied with certain things, and I just felt that there was something bigger and more for me. And so I left to start a business. And throughout all of these experiences, and when my mentor this week said, you can be grateful and dissatisfied, she put words on something that I hadn't, I think, really put words on. And leaving those positions often, I felt guilty. I felt guilty because each time I was taking a risk. I was the major bread earner in the family. And so every time I decided to change, it meant a lot of personal investment, time, maybe, international travel. I traveled internationally for years, so that was almost weekly travel. It meant if I changed companies, taking a huge risk, also that maybe it wouldn't work out. But, so I knew that, and I felt guilty a lot of those times because I felt that maybe I'm putting my family at risk, that my kids were going to college. Was I putting their college education and the fact that I could afford it or not, was I putting them at risk? But I just knew deep down that it is something that I had to do. I had to challenge myself even more. I had to think bigger. I had to take on more complex problems. And so what I learned through this is also that I had to trust myself, trust my intuition, and trust my calling. I think it would have been awful to stay in a job. And so I want you to also listen to this very closely. I don't think it is helpful to stay in a job where there is an underlying feeling of dissatisfaction. I think that thwarts your personal and your professional growth. But more importantly, I think you become resentful. When I had thought, because I left a company, great job, love my colleagues, loved everything about it, making great money, the travel. I left it in the middle of COVID to join a new company. That seemed crazy at the time. Like, I quit literally the week before we went into lockdown. My kids were in college, both of my kids. So, but I knew that if I had stayed in that job, I wouldn't have put my best foot forward. It would have become a little mechanical. I would have started to get bored. So probably you're familiar with burnout. A lot of people now talk about bore out. For me, I would have gotten bored, and that is not the energy that I wanted to bring to my professional development and my professional career. And so being dissatisfied, staying and being dissatisfied, that would have caused me to feel resentful. So was I grateful in all of these situations? 100% yes. Just to show you how grateful I was, and I can still remember it, the day that I decided to leave that company in the middle of COVID, I cried. Like I cried, like sobbing, crying, because I was so grateful for what that company had done for me, but I just couldn't stay. And so I understand that you might feel guilt, but I also want to encourage you to follow your intuition. If you feel a pull, that is okay. It is 100% okay to feel grateful and dissatisfied. And I would encourage you, if that is what you are doing or feeling, I would say it's more of a feeling, to do something about it. Take action. It was the same thing when we decided to move to southern France. I was so grateful for where we lived. I loved our community. We were extremely accessible to Paris. I had the subway stop. It was 100 meters away. I lived next to the Bois de Vincennes. It's the Eastern Forest, the Vincennes Forest in Paris. We had an amazing apartment, amazing friends, neighbors, but something felt I just wasn't satisfied. And we decided to move, and it has just been so much better than I ever thought possible. And so if there's one thing that I want you to take away, and I know I've said that a couple times now, because I've been on a soapbox here, speaking from the heart, you can be grateful and still dissatisfied. So I would encourage that if you are having those feelings, please do something about it. Take action, because life on the other side of that dissatisfaction can be so much better. Will I be dissatisfied in a few years? I don't know, maybe. Right now, I'm so grateful and so satisfied. And that is just such an amazing feeling. And it is something also that I want for you. So, question for you today. What are you grateful for? And on a scale of 1 to 5, how dissatisfied are you with your professional experience? And if that dissatisfaction is relatively high, I invite you to start questioning why and just open your mind to possibilities. What could be the next step? What could a new possibility look like? I would love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to send me an email. Let me know also if this resonated and if you make any decisions if you are feeling slightly dissatisfied. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you soon.